Extraterrestrials. They have captured the imagination of countless people, and yet they are a personification of the interesting genre of science fiction, a form of speculative storytelling between reality and the imagination. Currently, Earth is the only known planet to sustain life in the known universe. However, scientists have discovered several worlds that could harbor life. Here on Earth, biologists have found countless species of extremophiles, organisms that live in harsh and hostile environments. As you can see here, this is a bit of moss, an example of an extremophile. And what's interesting about this is that it's growing on something inorganic. It's growing on an inorganic surface, this rock here. And now, since it's grown for a while, some of the moss has died and provided fertilizer for more moss to grow. They take this knowledge of these hardy organisms and apply it to the extreme conditions of our solar system's planets. Yes, life could exist in our own solar system, from the upper atmosphere of Venus to beneath the surface of Mars to pockets in Jupiter's atmosphere where conditions could be just right. However, two of the most promising worlds are Europa and Enceladus, moons of Jupiter and Saturn respectively. These moons could have saltwater oceans beneath their icy crusts. The gravitational forces of Jupiter and Saturn stretch and pull their moons, the same way that our own moon's gravity affects the tides on Earth. This stretching and pulling may keep the oceans of Europa and Enceladus from freezing solid, and both moons are believed to have a rocky and geologically active seafloor. Such conditions enabled life to begin on Earth. But what about exoplanets, planets outside our solar system? When searching for habitable exoplanets, astronomers first look for stars that are about the same size as our own Sun. They then look for planets that reside in the circumstellar habitable zone, or Goldilocks zone. This is the margin of distance between a planet and its sun, where liquid water can form. The planet is not too close that the water would evaporate, and not too far away where the water would freeze. Thus, it is in just the right place, not too cold, not too hot, like the bear's porridge in the fairy tale. But what are the other criteria that are needed to discover extraterrestrials? Radio astronomer Frank Drake came up with an equation that expressed the number of communicating alien civilizations in our galaxy as a function of several terms multiplied together. This became known as the Drake equation. We know the numerical value of some of these terms, but not all of them. Consequently, estimated answers to the Drake equation range from less than 1 to over 70,000. So is there a chance that we will ever meet little green men? Some believe that we should have already met them. This is the basis of the Fermi-Hart paradox, which states that any sufficiently motivated extraterrestrials have had more than enough time to explore all the solar systems of the Milky Way. Based on what we know about the possible number of spacefaring alien civilizations in our galaxy, the time it would take to explore it, and the age of Earth, we should have been visited dozens of times. This could mean that intelligent life is extremely rare. We might know the basic conditions for life to exist, but we have no idea how rare it is for intelligent life forms to evolve. We also don't know how long intelligent species could survive. Perhaps alien civilizations don't live that long. With the threats that our own civilization faces, such as nuclear war and climate change, this theory may not be that far-fetched. Are we truly alone? The hope is that eventually we will find the answer.
At this moment, I don't think we can really prove anything relating to life on other planets.
I don't know if they exist.
I don't believe it. I don't think they exist at all.
I want to believe that that is the case.
I don't know if UFO sightings are enough.
I think it's impossible for there not to be life on other planets, maybe even in our solar system.
I think it would be very unlikely if life didn't exist on other planets.
I think it's definitely possible, considering life has existed on Earth for a very long time.
It would probably look very different from humans or from anything we would expect based on our Earth reference points.
It would probably heavily depend on what the planet's environment was.
They would have whatever features would make it easier for them to survive on their planet.
So yeah, I think there's definitely a planet in our own galaxy at least that has life on it.
Probably a planet that's warm, and if the life is like the life on our planet, it would have water.
planets that have a fairly mild temperature and climate and the presence of water and other important ingredients for life. But there's certainly also people who are looking for extremophiles, so life that could survive in very different environments from Earth.
That would suggest that they were intelligent, which I don't think is a guarantee.
If there is intelligent life elsewhere in the universe, we'll probably have very different beliefs.
Any civilized life forms would have come up with their own sort of code of logic and rationality.
I would imagine that aliens have totally different languages from Earth languages. First of all, they would have very different communicative anatomy and apparatus, I expect.
I don't see how any alien could possibly speak a language that's already spoken on Earth.
You know, they could communicate in all sorts of different ways. They might communicate telepathically. They might communicate with just like body movement.
They could have gills, maybe. They could breathe in through water. Or they could draw different elements out through the air than we could.
There's other like liquid forms of different elements that might be able to sustain life.
It seems like the most likely elements are ones that have the same outer electron shell as carbon.
I wouldn't consider them human because they didn't even evolve on the same planet as us. It would just be an extraordinary coincidence.
I would absolutely consider extraterrestrials people. I probably wouldn't consider them human because that's a specific type of animal.
I would still define that person as an extraterrestrial, unless, you know, you did a gene test.
Given the rise of fundamentalisms and intolerance on Earth, I would be very concerned about how we would receive alien visitors.
Sure, as long as we don't have to follow them.
So I think, yeah, we would accept some of their ideologies.
Well, I would still be concerned about communication missteps.
Probably a global-wide, shock, and I wouldn't say panic.
If they're peaceful, I think we could have a peaceful relationship with them.
We would first have to figure out how to communicate.
Our civilization will probably be in a very different place.
A lot of the way that people look at each other will change.
Extraterrestrials first landed on our screens in 1902 in George Méliès's A Trip to the Moon. They would make only a few more appearances before the 1950s and the beginning of the Cold War and the space race, when there would be a sudden burst in the popularity of films featuring space exploration and extraterrestrial life. The extraterrestrial in film and television stood symbolically for many of the country's major fears at the time, including the parallel political fears of communism and McCarthyism. Arguably, the extraterrestrial often stood in for the subversive other that McCarthyism and neocolonialism sought to expose and destroy. At the same time, the extraterrestrial figure illustrated the country's collective ambitions. Its image in film and television has embodied the projection of our utopian and dystopian ideals. The figure of the extraterrestrial body has also acted as a site onto which contemporary social fears and desires towards the queer body were projected. Above all, the extraterrestrial body in media has served as a symbolic figure through which to reimagine gender, identity, and desire. It is also a figure that has served to disrupt social and cultural meta-narratives, theories of what we know and don't know, what and how much we should be allowed to know, what is ours to control and what is not. Extraterrestrials who visit Earth or are discovered on faraway planets interrupt the medical-industrial system of categorizing bodies and identities by presenting us with bodies and identities that are unknown or unrecognizable. Furthermore, there is the fear of the extraterrestrial who walks among us, convincingly disguised as human, echoing the social anxiety of the undetected queer neighbor or coworker lurking in our midst. This was especially prevalent during the Lavender Scare of the 1950s. In the epistemology of the closet, Eve Kosofsky-Sedgwick coined the term nonce taxonomy to mean the making and unmaking and remaking and redissolution of hundreds of old and new categorical imaginings concerning all the kinds it may take to make up a world. The figure of the extraterrestrial, shrouded in queer subtext and metatext, invokes the concept of a queer social taxonomy, of a destabilized system of categorization that resists conventions, perhaps even resists categorization itself. The extraterrestrial represents the interruption of another meta-narrative of social discourse, that is, the narrative of heterosexual reproductive futurity. Film and television depictions of extraterrestrials are often centered on their domination of human populations for purposes of advancing their species. The extraterrestrials' means of reproduction are a menacing and mysterious threat, often define what we believe to be true about the role of human biology in discourses of forward progress. In fact, the queerness of the extraterrestrial may cause us to question the forward progress discourse of space exploration altogether. It suggests an alternate vision of the future, one that is defined by identities, systems of life, and ways of being that we have not yet imagined. A future that is not predicated on the violent framework of imperialism that has defined human history. In stories about outer space, the humans either defeat or are defeated by the extraterrestrials. Rarely do they find a way to cohabitate peacefully.
I once loved a sailor, once a sailor loved me, but they were not a sailor. He sailed on the wide blue sea, he sailed in an airship, sailed like a bird on the wing, and every evening at midnight, he'd come to my window and sing. Come take a trip in my airship, come let us take to the stars. We'll travel away to Venus, we'll sail away to Mars. No one will see when we're snorkeling, no one will know we glare blue. Come take a trip in my airship, then we'll visit the man in the moon. One night we're sailing away from the crowds. We passed through the Glorious night while idly watching the clouds. I asked them if they would be mine. Just by the dipper, they gave me their heart. The sun shone on our tentacles. We swore that we would never part. Come take a trip in my airship, come let us see to the stars. Come fly away to Venus, we'll sail away to Mars. No one will see when we're snorkeling, no one will know we glare blue. Come take a trip to my airship,